Hello and welcome, everybody, to this month's webcast that's produced in collaboration between the Women in Streaming Media and SIMPTY. We do appreciate you being here. This is the third in the series of 6. I do have some housekeeping that I need to do. First of all, the title today is The Current State of AI in Media Accessibility and Localization. You can see our speaker is Belen Aguyo Garcia. Do want to thank AJA Video Systems for their ongoing support. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Years and decades even for sponsoring our webcasts. So if you see them on the road, please thank them for their support of industry and SIMPTY education. The third webcast produced between Women in Streaming Media and SIMPTY is, as I said, The Current State of AI and Media Accessibility and Localization. We have 3 more coming. You can see the dates there. And who is Women in Streaming Media? They are a nonprofit, and you can see the various industry events that they provide, speaking, networking, etc. Polly Hickling is responsible for their education. She just happens to be SIMPTY's vice president of education as well. So there's a very strong link there. And speaking of membership, if you'd like to become a member and benefit from that membership, there is a QR code there. You can go to simpty.org as well and see a link at the top of the page for membership. Lots and lots and lots of benefits. So, please consider becoming a SIMPTY member. SIMPTY SD2110 is a very, very popular topic, and they have a road show. They're going to be in Las Vegas in April. Sponsorship opportunities are available. Again, there's a QR code there, and you can go to simpty.org, Roadshow 2026, why attend, and you can find out more. And you can see that we're going to be in a couple of other places a little bit later on. As I said, SIMPTY SD2110, very, very popular. And we do have an online course, an instructor-led online course starting on the 12th, which is tomorrow. You can go to the SIMPTY website and register for that, and you'll receive instructions on how to access it. Again, very popular. The call for papers for the 2026 SIMPTY Media Technology Summit is open, and there are 2 tracks. There's the conference track and the journal track. You can see the deadline there for submissions is May 31st, 2026. You have a little bit of time, but don't wait till the last minute. The event will be in the Pasadena Convention Center, as it was last year. And actually, people said that they enjoyed that venue very, very much. This webcast is presented for informational purposes only, and views and opinions expressed are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of SIMPTY, Women in Streaming Media, or their members. Reference to any specific company, product, or service is not a promotion, endorsement, or recommendation by SIMPTY or Women in Streaming Media. Our speaker today, as I said, is in fact Belen Aguyo Garcia, Executive Consultant of Innovation, and I'm going to bring her up on screen now. Belen, I hope I pronounced it correctly under pressure. Did I pronounce Guyon?
Yes, you did a great job, Joel. Thank you so much. And hi,
Excellent.
everyone. So happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe the think tank that you founded.
Yes, sure. So I've been in the localization industry for about 15 years, always working in multimedia localization, be it video games or media content. So that's what I do. Currently, I'm executive consultant of innovation at Terra. Terra is a company that offers localization accessibility services to gaming companies and media companies. And I'm also the co-founder of the AI Localization Think Tank, which is a non-for-profit organization run by the willpower and good energy of its volunteers. And what we're trying to do is to democratize knowledge. when it comes to AI and how it's impacting our industry. So we have a website, ailogthinktank.com, that you can visit and find free resources. So hope to see you around. Today we are going to talk about the current state of AI in media accessibility and localization. So we are going to tackle questions such as who's watching your content and why customized experiences matter, why accessibility and localization matter, and why do we need to consider them at a very early stage of production. Can AI help us solve the media access challenge? What are the guardrails that you need to put in place in order to succeed in this space? And how can you create efficient pipelines to make your content accessible to more viewers? So those are some of the questions that we're going to tackle. So let's jump right into it. But first, I wanted to ask the audience a question. Where do you think that most films are produced?
And we have launched the poll in just a moment. We'll give folks we'll give folks an opportunity to respond, and then when they have responded, we will bring the results up on the screen. And people are responding. I will not tell you what they're saying. They can't see what other people are saying either. Yeah, interesting results. Interesting results. I'm going to end the poll, and let's bring the results up on the screen.
Okay.
And you see that
So,
the top one is Canada, the
okay,
purple one is India,
India,
China.
China, and United States. Great. I think our audience is very knowledgeable because that's totally right. India is the main producer of content, and sometimes I wanted to bring this up because sometimes people think that the United States is the main content creator for the film industry. And we typically have a very US-centric, English-centric approach to media, which kind of influences localization and accessibility strategies as well. But actually, the United States is actually the fourth country in film production. So the first one is India with over 2,000 films produced per year in 2023, then followed by China, then Japan, then United States, and interestingly, Spain in the fifth place. So that's really interesting to me. So when we think about content, sometimes we think that the content is created in English. The stories are told mainly in Hollywood, but that is not the case. So that already tells us that the media content industry is very diverse, even when it comes to the source of it. And going back to this very nice quote from Bong Joon-ho when he won the Golden Globe Award to Best Movie. By the way, the best movie non-English is the name of the award, which is already telling a lot about we consider like English and then everything else that is not English, which is really funny for me to as a non-English speaker and non-American. But he really created a great success for foreign or non-English films, so films coming from outside of the United States with the film Parasites. And he said that once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films. So I think that really encapsulates the essence of localization and the essence of how necessary language and translation and accessibility is to make our content more accessible to more people. And following this little trivia that we are doing here, I wanted to know how many languages our audiences speak. So
And
giving
we
you a
have
few seconds to reply.
yeah. Wow, they're fast. They're coming in fast and furiously. Still coming in. Still coming in. Does sign language count as a language?
Of course.
And I think I speak 2.5 languages. I'm
Nice.
trying to learn Spanish and I am doing terribly at it.
You can practice with me.
Oh,
We
I
can talk
practice every
later.
day. Okay. I'm going to end the poll, bring the results up on screen, And this is what they say.
Okay. So most people only speak one language. Some people also following by one, two, and then yeah, three and more than three. Go those people who speak more than three. You have my my admirations. Kudos to you. But yeah, this is also important because people, especially on the media content creation side, sometimes they only speak one language. So by default, they don't necessarily always think about other languages, other cultures, localization, accessibility, and so on and so forth. So it's really important to have that multilingual, multicultural mindset when creating content, because content is globalized everywhere today, right? And also a little bit of more trivia content for you if you are having a drink with your friends this weekend and you didn't know that there are more than 7,000 languages around the world. This number is changing every day because some languages unfortunately are dying as the speakers of those languages die, and there is no way to continue that legacy. But there's so many languages around the world. Um, this is also very interesting because even if English is the most spoken language in 2025, that doesn't mean that is the language with the most native speakers. The language with most native speakers is Chinese Mandarin, followed by Spanish, and then English, and then Hindi, Bengali, and Portuguese. So this is really important because even if you have um, the illusion that many people or everyone speaks English, that's not true. First of all, sometimes, like myself, I speak English. I love languages in the first place, but also because I have to. I must speak English to work in the industry that I work. Otherwise, I couldn't be doing the work that I do. So I'm kind of forced to speak English in a way. But when I choose to enjoy my free time and my entertainment, I want to watch content, to play video games, or to read, I prefer to do that in my native language because that's how I connect with my culture, with the stories, with the emotions. Sometimes I also do it in English, but many times I do it in my native language. So that's very important, that we have the illusion that everyone speaks English, but most people might prefer to consume content or media or art in their own native language. So that's very important. And now one more question. I'm interested in knowing if you are creating content or working with companies that create content media, how often do you think about localization with setting up a strategy for content distribution and delivery?
We have presented the poll to folks. And the responses are coming in. Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting, Bella. I'll give it a couple more seconds here, see if anyone has reached the end of their thought process. I don't see anything, so
Let's
let's
see, let's
bring
see.
the results up on the screen. And the results are... I'm slow. There we go.
Okay, so always, often, okay, there's a little bit of everything here. Only when the stakeholders brought it up. Okay, so there is a good mix, but we are on the positive sides of things. And the second one is the same, but related to accessibility. So one is localization, which is making the content accessible in different languages. But how about accessibility, making the content accessible for people with diverse needs, who might need sign language interpreting or captions or audio description? Let's see if it's the same as
Let's
localization, more
see.
or
Hang on
less.
a second. Huh. It's a little bit different, but the responses are still coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is indeed a little bit different. Couple more responses. Give folks one. I'll give you the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Let's bring up the responses.
Okay, so it looks like people consider accessibility actually more often than localization, from what I can tell. So the bars for rarely or often when only when brought by stakeholders are shorter. So interesting, very interesting results. Thank you everyone for sharing. And let's continue with the presentation. So when we were discussing at the beginning, like who is watching your content, we have to have in mind that the global population is very diverse. There are more than almost 8 billion people around the world, more than 7,000 languages around the world, 430 million deaf people, 43 million blind people, 2.2 billion people with some level of vision impairment, over 739 million adults worldwide who cannot read or write. Then around 10% of people over 65 years old, that sometimes we forget about the elderly population, and around 25 to 27% of people under 18 years old. So really, our audience around the world is very, very, very diverse with very different needs, expecting a customized experience so that, the content that is generated around the world, the media, the films, the shows, the video games, cater for their needs as well so that they can access that content. And why accessibility and why localization? Well, as you probably know, last year the European Accessibility Act came up, and this is a milestone for accessibility services, especially on the media side, because traditionally it's been up to the member states to decide how they want to manage accessibility, but now they will be forced, so to say, from the regulation to implement more access services. And that includes also broadcasters and on-demand media services, so streaming platforms as well. And that the scope also reaches subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, audio description, spoken subtitles, and sign language interpreting. This is still to be seen how these regulations are going to be implemented, because at the end of the day, it's up to the member states to decide exactly how to articulate that. But we're starting to see some movement here and there that it's benefiting the accessibility around Europe. So that's great. And then localization is also always very important because it's such a great revenue enabler function. Basically, this is a recent revenue results from Netflix. And as you can see here, more than half of the revenue for Netflix subscriptions come from outside of the United States. So that means that all those localized versions are generating a lot of billions of revenue for Netflix, and the same for the other streaming platforms. So from a purely capitalistic perspective, it makes sense to localize content. And also interesting on the UK's side, that even if the UK is not now impacted by the European Accessibility Act, but they are very proactive in cater for the needs of vulnerable groups. And so they included video on demand services such as Netflix, Amazon Video, and so on and so forth within their Media Act implementation. So now these platforms will also have to abide by Ofcom regulations, and there will be some thresholds of accessibility that they will need to meet in order to be legal for them to stream in the UK. So that's also great news, and great to see that our neighbors are also fighting for access services. And now this data, just to illustrate again a little bit of part of the problem of accessibility and both linguistic accessibility and sensory accessibility. This report is really interesting. I recommend that you have a look. It's a little bit older because it's from December 2023, but still it paints a very good picture of how accessibility is actually the state of accessibility right now in streaming services, basically. So here you can see, for example, when it comes to subtitles, how the languages are distributed across the different platforms. So for Netflix, it was most of the content is accessible with English subtitles, but then German, French, Spanish, Ukrainian, Arabic, and so on and so forth. So you can see that most of the content is not available in all languages. Actually, a very little part of the content is accessible in more than, like, less than 50% of the content is accessible in more than three languages. The same happens with Amazon Prime. Actually, in Amazon Prime, all the content is not even subtitled in English, according to this report. And then we can see kind of the same percentage or similar percentage for the typical languages, like the European languages plus Portuguese and so on and so forth, but still a lot of room for improvement. Disney seemed to be the one localizing more consistently and into more languages, so great for them. Hopefully, we will be able to see more and more the increasing appearance of subtitles in multiple languages in these platforms as these regulations and the markets are shifting towards a more customized user experience for this type of content. When we talk about accessibility for the blind, so audio description is even worse. The picture that is painted here, only 12% of the content across these three platforms is audio described. Netflix being the one with the most audio description, but then very little, less than 10% for Amazon Prime and Disney Plus. So really very little content in this platform is accessible for people who are blind or who have visual impairments. And it's even worse if we look at audio description stats per language, because that 12%, most of it is audio described in English, thanks to the work that the associations are doing in the United States that are pressing this platform to these platforms to make the content accessible for blind people. So that's great that they are doing that. But as you can see, for the other languages, the amount of work, the amount of content that is audio described is very, very little. I mean, the Spanish is just a little bit as compared to English, and then French, Japanese, but you can see that other languages like Ukrainian, Romanian, Greek, Telugu, Czech, it's just very, very little. So everyone living in those countries speaking those languages are not able to watch this content audio described, so it's not accessible for them. So there is a lot of room for improvement. And how can we solve this access problem that we have in streaming platforms and also broadcasting scenarios? And I want to ask you, because there's been a lot of talk around AI and how AI can be used to translate everything and to make everything accessible. So I wanted to ask our audience once again, one more question. If you think that translation and accessibility are solved problems by technology at this point.
And the poll has appeared on the screen. We'll give folks a few minutes. Okay, I'm seeing a trend, but there are a few responses that kind of surprise me. I don't know a lot about your topic, Belen, but
Okay.
there is a little bit of a surprise there. We give folks just a few more seconds in order to respond, and then we'll close it up and bring the results up. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to end the poll. Last chance. Last chance. Okay. Here we go. Let's bring up the results. Takes me a couple of clicks here, so here you go.
Okay, so the big one is yes, the highest number of results. Then some people say not at all, and some people are not sure. Well, surprised but not surprised, I must say, because this is something that I've been seeing, especially from people of outside localization and accessibility, that have the impression that yes, this is already a solved problem by technology, and that's why I'm here today, to explain why not completely. So I'm glad that I got this response, because then this session has more sense. So Yes, can AI help us solve the media access challenge? Of course, it can help scale. It can help improve those stats that we saw, because there is so much room for improvement, and it's impossible to tackle everything without technology. But it is always it is a silver bullet or a magical solution to use AI for these services. None of these language technologies, unfortunately, are perfect or can be applied as a silver bullet for everything to be localized in all languages or to make accessible. There are some shortcomings there that we are going to explain in a minute. Also, there are a few different types of technologies that support different applications. So, for example, we have neural machine translation engines that can be used for translation of subtitles, dubbing scripts, AD scripts, automatic speech recognition, which can be used for transcription and creation of closed captions, text-to-speech technology that can be used for AI dubbing, narration, audio description, large language models that can be used for translation and other language-related tasks, not only translation, but much more. Sign language avatars that are being used for sign language interpreting, or what is called text to sign language, or computer vision that it's being used experimentally to create audio description or to describe images for the line. So the technology exists, they can be applied to this, but there is one main shortcoming to start with, that there is no parity in all languages. So when we're talking about localization, of course, there are so many languages that need to be localized, and not all languages perform equally well for the different technologies that we described in the previous slide. And they don't perform equally well for all content types, and they don't perform equally well for all use cases, and so on and so forth. So you really need to be strategic about it and really think it through to make the most out of technology without risking your brand reputation, without risking your user or viewer experience, and so on and so forth. So just to show you a little bit about this, where this language imbalance is originated. So this is the information that is available on the internet, basically, up to 2024. So more than half of the internet is in English, which is really interesting and surprising, followed by Spanish. But you see, Spanish is only like almost like 6%, but compared to more than half in English, and then Russian, German, French, blah, blah, blah. Some languages are not even here. The ones that are being localized in the major, content types like movies or video games are not even present here. So why do we care about this? Why do we care about the languages that are available on the internet? Because the source of LLM training data, you can go to any of these support pages from either OpenAI or Anthropic, you will see that the main source of data for these LLMs is the information that is publicly available on the internet. So that's probably 90% of the data that is in these LLMs is data scrapped from the internet. So if more than half of that data is in English, that's already creating an imbalance of language performance in those models. This is also interesting. I don't want to bore you with all the math and science, but basically, and this is a little bit outdated because this was the first version of GPT, which was the one that had open information about how the model was created. After that, this information is not available anymore, so we cannot know. But basically, in this first iteration of GPT, the developers stated that over 90% of the training data, as expected, was in English, and then just a little bit in French, a little bit in German, a little bit in Spanish, and so on and so forth. This person who created this article also tested different prompts in different languages, and of course the language that was more efficient in prompting was English, followed by Spanish, French, and so on and so forth. This person also identified that 10 high resource languages, the ones that are in the screen here, are more or less well supported. The other ones that were supported were like low resource, so the performance was very low. And as we said before, there are more than 7,000 languages in the world. So of course, not all of those were available through the LLM. This is also interesting when it comes to multilingual performance results, and this is more recent from Claude. So you can see here that the performance of Claude in English, it's up to the 100%, so great performance, perfect performance. But when we go to Spanish, it's a little bit less, so 98%, 97, 96, depending on the model. Then we have Brazilian Portuguese a little bit less, Italian similar to Spanish. But then when we go to other languages, like, for example, Yoruba or Swahili, we can see a very high drop in performance there for those languages. Why? Because there is no training data, because the models are not fine-tuned to cater for these languages, and so on and so forth. So this is interesting to see. And this test here, it's important to know that this is not for translation. It's just testing multilingual performance. So benchmarking the same tasks in different languages. But that gives us a picture of how these models will perform in the different languages when asking to do a translation task. And when we do the same exercise with ChatGPT models, we can see that the performance is even lower as compared to Claude. So Claude has better multilingual performance than ChatGPT, but the more we go to more not so highly rich in data on the internet languages like Swahili, Yoruba, and so on and so forth, the performance drops dramatically. So that is something that we need to take into account. Something that is even more worrying to me is that it's not only the language performance. So it's not only about how the language is structured, generated by these models, but is the cultural bias that it's found in these models. There is this very interesting article that I recommend that you read on that. Basically what the researchers did is that they prompted GPT, different models of GPT, with questions that were supposed to give different values depending on where you are in the world. So we know that certain countries are more in favor of abortion or in favor of homosexual marriage and things like that. Some countries are less in favor of these topics, and so on and so forth. Some countries are more individualistic, some countries are more collectivistic, and so on and so forth. So what basically they took this standardized survey and they prompted GPT, and what they found out is that you can see the GPT models here in red. So you can basically, what this is telling us is that the GPT models are culturally aligned with the values of, for example, the Nordic countries, Netherlands, Switzerland, Iceland, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and so on and so forth, France. So mainly Western countries, very white countries with very specific cultural values. But when we go to the other side, for example, Libya, Jordan, Yemen, Nigeria, Ghana, that's so far away culturally from how ChatGPT thinks. So basically, what this means is when GPT, in this case, but all other models are generating content, they are speaking in a way, or they have ideas in a way that are aligned with these values in these countries and not to the other values, which it's even more worrying for me, because that means that even if the language is well structured, but this cultural bias is injected in how the message is generated, and it can even impact how we think, and it can start impact how we see the world, because this is so subtle that sometimes it's very difficult to identify. And we're talking about localization or accessibility. If we let this bias enter our content, two things can happen. One, that people will not feel good about how the content is generated in their language, so perhaps they don't feel connected with the translations, with the content, with the movie, with the show. And the other thing that can happen is that, which is worse to me, is that at some point all the cultural views are flattened to this kind of LLM way of thinking that is kind of mixing but leaning towards this side of the spectrum. and that we will end losing a lot of cultural richness that we have these days. So this is something very, very worrying. And yes, basically these were the conclusions of this paper that I really recommend that you have a look. So cultural bias in LLMs favors values of English speaking and Protestant European countries. This may affect people's authentic expressions and how we speak. And what they did basically is to use cultural prompting in their research. So what they did is they tweaked the prompt and they told GPT, like, I'm a person living in this country and blah, blah, blah. So they included these tips to GPT so that it could infer the values expected from that country. But as the researchers explained here, this was not completely effective. Even in some occasions, it created worse results than without the cultural prompting. So basically what they are saying is that there is no easy way to mitigate this risk when it comes to bias. And that being said, so talking more about the general Gen AI, and now we all talk about LLMs, and LLMs are the core of all the newest innovations, basically, when it comes to accessibility and localization. But let's jump into more specific limitations of this AI technology for media access and localization. Let's go to more concrete examples. So let's start with very simple examples, but very, I think, clear. So when we talk about automatic speech recognition models, even if these models are improving a lot over time, there are, for example, different accents or different pronunciation of certain words that are not always properly captured in the transcription. So, for example, African American vernacular English, Spanish Andalusian accent, or even how children speak, people with speech issues, and so on and so forth, is not always properly captured. And this technology still does not accurately transcribe all sound and paralinguistic information. There are already models that try to understand the sound, and through Gen AI and LLM describe the sound, but that is not always the case, and that is not always working properly yet. So there are some limitations there. When it comes to neural machine translation engines, there are languages with grammatical gender like Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, German, French. So when I say in English, I'm so excited to be here in a movie, for example, or in a show, in Spanish it could be estoy muy emocionada if I'm a woman, or muy emocionado if I'm a male, de estar aquí. So if we don't give the context to the neural machine translation engine, it has no way to understand who the speaker is. So we need to provide metadata, so it doesn't always work. And also there are languages with different levels of formality. Korean has up to 7 languages of formality, which is really difficult for the machine to get. And depending on in which moment of the show or the movie the people are speaking to each other, they use a different level of formality. And how we translate that into the target languages when there is only one level of formality or 2 levels of formality, in a way that it makes sense and respects the Korean culture and also serves the purpose of the plot without, damaging the experience. So these are things that are not so straightforward, basically. Other technologies, for example, text-to-speech technologies, when it comes to AI dubbing and these new very interesting synthetic voices models and so on and so forth. So there are also some limitations that we need to take into account. For example, different accents. Now, my stepson, he loves to watch YouTube content, and he doesn't care if it's properly dubbed or dubbed with AI. So he puts a lot of content that is dubbed with AI dubbing. And how I know that he's watching AI dubbed content is because it mixes Spanish from Spain accent with Mexican or Argentinian accent. So it's very clear that, because a person is not able to do these different accents in one sentence, but the AI can. So these models, because the data that was used to train these models is mixed and it's not labeled many times per accent and per territory, it's all mixed in the model. What happens is that when it generates speech, it mixes the accent. So it is very important. I mean, for a YouTube video of some whatever YouTuber, it's okay because the audience doesn't care about it. But if you're putting premium content or content that puts your brand reputation at stake, that is something that you need to take into account. So do not mix Castilian Spanish with Mexican Spanish, or French Parisian with French Canadian, or Brazilian Portuguese with Portuguese from Portugal, for example. Something that is important as well is that there are different paces. So different languages have different paces. In my case, for example, Spanish is a very fast language as compared to English, as you can see here in this graph here, and probably you're listening to me, so even if I'm speaking in English, I speak probably faster than an English speaker who is native, right? So these are things that are also impacting how the AI speech is generated, because if the source is English and it's very slow, compared to Spanish or Japanese, for example, as you can see here, it's going to sound unnatural. So how do we make it work? Do we create longer translations so that the time is filled, or do we play with the mixing, or how do we make it feel natural and not robotic or artificial? And another thing that is really important as well is the different ways to express emotion. So pitch, volume, sorry, there's a typo there. It's not volumen, but volume, and intonation. So it's very important because, in Spanish, we might be very like open and like passionate, and we are very loud. And that's something that we see as positive, but in other countries might be seen as rude or negative. And I have this anecdote that I will never forget. The first time I went to Denmark on a trip, and the thing that shocked me the most when I was there was that when I was on the street, I could hear silence. And that was impossible in Spain, because there's always someone like speaking passionately on the street, and so on and so forth. So it was really shocking for me to hear the silence. And I was like, why people don't talk or like breathe or something in this country? So, this is a way where how we communicate, how we express ourselves, and how we express emotions that we need to take into account when basically creating these synthetic voices. What else about language limitations? So there are really nice sign language avatars commercially available out there. For example, Cara.tech here that you can see the example on the screen. But most of these solutions are only available in English or variants of sign language in English, so American, British, or New Zealand sign language, but not in other languages. So that's a limitation. You cannot apply the same technology to everything. And computer vision, I've seen a few demos, a few experiments on how to use this for audio description, how to use computer vision to describe what's on a screen. But the thing is, audio description is not only about saying everything that is on a screen, but saying what's on a screen that's relevant for the plot, and that also there is a space between the dialogues to fill that information. So if the computer vision model tells me, okay, in this room there are like a sofa, 4 chairs, like a lamp, and this blue and this and that, but I don't have enough time to fit that into the movie or the show within the dialogue, it won't be useful. So there's still a lot of work to do in that regard. So while AI can definitely help us scale, is not a plug and play or one size fits all solution. So I hope everyone who replied yes at the beginning when I was asking, do you think that localization and accessibility is a solved problem by technology, that now you understand that yes, technology can be really, really helpful, but it's not always applicable to all use cases and all languages, and you have to take care and be careful. So that's why you need to put guardrails in place when you are launching an AI strategy for media and content for accessibility and localization. So there is this article here that I wrote for the AI localization think tank that I talked at the beginning that you can check if you're interested. But basically, there are many ingredients when it comes to your AI strategy. So you need to understand data that is available that you might use to customize models, your source content, how is it a structure, how difficult it is, what are the characteristics of this source content. There is a lot of like proper names, or there's a lot of humor included in this, or I don't know. You really need to be familiar with it. It's like very long sentences, or it's more documentary type of content, or more like dialogues, and it's more like jargon and slang, or it's more like structured scripts, and so on and so forth. So really understand that, so that then you can see which technology can be applied. You also need to have a content prioritization strategy. So basically, okay, I have all this content to localize and make accessible. What is to me like more high stakes premium content that will have a bigger impact on my brand reputation versus content that is not so premium, that I can afford to have a lighter quality strategy, and things like that. Um, what are your end users expecting? What is the level of tolerance for errors for your end users? Will they complain? Will that impact how they perceive your brand? What languages are more important for your go to market strategy? And how do you define quality, and which content pipelines do you have? So these are some of the things in a very simplified way that you need to take into account when setting up an AI strategy. And also, one thing that is very important is, are you measuring the right thing? So when you are implementing AI in your workflows, sometimes you will be measuring, or in some localization programs will be measuring, I don't know, accuracy or linguistic quality, which is, of course, very important. But I think it's also even more important to think about what is the expected outcome of that content. And this is an example from video games, but just to give you like some ideas on how this content tiering strategy could go about. So from all the content that you have to localize or make accessible, what are the different tiers that you have? What are the expected outcomes that those contents will generate? So for example, in-game text in a game. So you want that the player is able to play without disruption. So player support, you want it to be informative so that people understand what it is about. Marketing email, you want an action from the player. You want them to click on buy, or on go to your website, or something like that. So those are the expected business outcomes. And then how are you measuring that success? Through sentiment analysis, through UX surveys, through, for example, when it comes to player support, low support tickets for a given locale, or when it comes to email marketing, through high click-through rate and things like that. So how do you connect language, localization, and business outcomes? And how you link that in a way that then your AI strategy and your localization strategy makes sense and provides the highest value to your business. Those are things that need to be done. And then when it comes to content pipelines, so again, this is just examples, but this is something that it doesn't need to be black or white. I mean, there's a lot of gray in between. And if you understand your content, as we were saying before, if you have a very clear content prioritization strategy and language prioritization strategy, and then you understand the outcomes that you're expecting from each content, you can understand where the risk is, and which content pipelines you can apply to the different types of contents that you have. So you can have a very smart kind of routing strategy that, okay, if this content is this way, it goes to premium translation, which is translation by human, editing, proofreading, and QA, because I want top notch, because this is going to be a film that is going to be on theaters, and it's going to be a blockbuster, and I want it to be fully human. I don't want to risk anything. Then perhaps you want to go on a more like hybrid approach. So you want to do machine translation, automated translation with a pass of post-editing by a human, or perhaps you want to have a more hybrid approach. So you would like to have a machine translation generated by the engine, then automatic quality estimation. So another engine will tell you which segments, which translations are okay and can go directly to publishing, and which translations need to be checked by a human because the engine doesn't feel that it created a good translation. So you can have these hybrid workflows, or you can have a fully automated workflow, for example, for content that is really super low risk, that you know that most people are not going to read, but still you want to make it available for for your users and so on and so forth. So you can have machine translated generated content, then automatic quality estimation again, and then automated post-editing. So asking the machine to improve those segments where the engine feels it was not doing great. So there's so many different options that you can have, but always strategically and always paired to your content prioritization strategy that we discussed before. And this is just, again, very simplified way to look at how an AI strategy can look like. And it will vary depending on not only the use case, but also like budget, content type or use case, impact on end users or brand reputation, and languages involved. So, for example, you can use more automation for low budget productions, for live content, because you basically don't have time to have too many humans in the loop, so you can go with fully automated workflows for live content, but always putting guardrails in place, because you want to make sure that no swear words are included in the captions, that the terminology is properly conveyed, and so on and so forth. And then for more high-stakes productions, complex content, and so on and so forth, you prefer to go into a more human-in-the-loop or fully human type of workflow. So always being strategic and making the right decisions. And always at the end, almost at the end of it, so main takeaways of this presentation, if there's anything that you have to learn, is that your audience is diverse by default and they expect a customized experience, so don't forget about it. Localization and accessibility not only contribute to improve the customer experience, as we've seen, but also to generate revenue and open new markets, so it's a good investment. And while AI can help scale, it's not a silver bullet, so be careful when you apply it and how you apply it. It is very important to understand AI's limitations and build a robust AI strategy that will put the right guardrails in place, that will avoid any damage to your brand reputation or to your end users, players, or audience. The key elements that go into an AI strategy, as we've discussed, are data source, content pipelines, content prioritization, and language strategy. And it is very advisable to build your strategy around your business KPI. So make sure that you're measuring the right things and you're measuring the things that are bringing the most value to your business, and try not to have blind spots. And that's it. I hope this presentation was somehow useful for you. This is my personal information in case you want to reach out to me to keep discussing, or if you have any more questions, because we are very short on time right now. So I will be very happy to connect, and you can follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn, follow our AI Localization Think Tank website and LinkedIn page. And also, if you want to know more about my company, Terra, I'm always available. Thank you so much.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Belen. And we've been joined by a very special person. Emily Bergen is one of the organizers of the series. Welcome, Emily.
Hello. Yeah, so excited to be here. Incredible presentation, Belen. I really learned quite a lot about everything you were discussing there, and very important, particularly on the accessibility front, a lot of it. And so I'm just really glad that we were able to do this today, and hopefully teach a few more people about, the incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
There are no questions in the queue. However, this is an amateur question, okay? In terms of localization and such, does that happen? It's two questions. Does that happen automatically based on something?
Do you mean how localization is decided, like which languages are? I think it depends on the content creator, distributor, whoever it is, a gaming company or a streaming platform or cinema company. Distributor decides which languages are important for them to go to market, and usually that strategy is very kind of static, although it's been evolving over time, and we see more languages being added, especially South Asian languages. Turkish, for example, is very popular recently, and Brazilian Portuguese is very big. I mean, there are like languages that keep emerging markets that keep being added to the go-to-market strategy of many of these companies. And once that is decided, then there is a full pipeline workflow that makes this content accessible, be it through subtitles, dubbing, or any other means in the different languages. And some companies might decide to use AI for that with a human post-editor. Some companies might decide to go fully human or a hybrid, depending on the content, which is what we discussed.
Right. We do have a question that came in. Emily, do you want to read it?
Absolutely. Yes, this is from Michael. One of the things that the deaf and hard of hearing audience complains about is the censorship of swear words when the words are in the audio but are removed from the subtitles.
Yes.
The second part of that is, are you saying that swear words should always be removed? It didn't go over in the paste.
Definitely no. I think it depends on the content creator, what they want to do. But the problem is not when there is a swear word and you want to decide if you want to include that swear word or not. The problem is when the transcription is wrong, and instead of saying something, it transcribes that a swear word that is not supposed to be there in the first place. So I think that is something that can happen sometimes. Or yes, I remember in some conferences that I attended, and there were the automated captions, and all sorts of funny things were displayed in the captions, because especially in international conferences, none of us have a good accent, so the automatic captions are a little bit all over the place because of the pronunciation. So that's for me the problem. If you know that you're in a context where swear words are not supposed to be used, maybe you want to add a list of forbidden words for the engine not to reproduce. If it's a creative choice that, okay, we know that in this debate or in this, like, I don't know, a live sports or something like that, the narrators are going to use swear words, and you want the swear words to be transcribed, go for it. You don't need to censor. So I don't like to censor. Actually, I say tons of swear words in my normal life. So it depends on the context and on the intent of the event or the creator, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that choice and being able, it's how do you actually toggle it on and off depending on the scenario, really is a bit of a challenge. We've got another question anonymously submitted. Belen, do you feel the next generations might develop higher tolerance for lower quality dubbing being exposed to YouTube automated dubbing in their youth?
Yes, absolutely. I see it already with my stepson, that the other day he watched the movie Matilda, completely dubbed in a super weird way on YouTube for whatever reason. It was not a good quality, and he enjoyed the movie. He didn't care about it. I was like, how can you watch this with this, like, with this dubbing? And he's like, he was completely enjoying it. And I believe it's not only YouTube, but also like TikTok, and like how content is being created by users, amateurs, non-professionals, and younger generations are being exposed to that. They won't have the same quality standards that we have, and that we will see. We will see what happens, but I am already seeing this. So I wonder if I take my kid to the cinema, to the theater, to watch a movie, if it was AI dubbed, if he would say something, even if it's in a different setup. It's supposed to be premium content. It would be nice to make an experiment about that, but I don't know. I definitely think that AI is shaping how we perceive quality and content. Definitely.
We have one more question, and I know that you have to run, Belen. But I just wanted to let Emily know that we do have one final question.
Yeah, absolutely. This one's from Ellen. Are AI translation services being offered as microservices to be paid for and spun up as needed?
I think some companies, so the business model of translation is evolving. Right now is still very unit based. So even per word rates or per subtitle rate or per take rate when it comes to dubbing. So it's still very transactional and very tied to these units of value, mainly because procurement teams in most companies need something tangible and predictable. So I'm seeing that this is still the predominant model, but I do believe that this will be evolving over time. We are seeing companies that are already offering like subscription-based type of models where they offer like you can do this much translation per month at this rate, or these are like different tiers depending on your needs. So this might be the case in the future as these workflows that I shared, the content pipelines that are shared, are basically evolving over time and are going to be more AI driven. I believe that these business models might change, but time shall see. We shall see.
Amazing.
Good.
Like,
All right. Well, we've gone past. I know that you're late for a meeting, Belen.
Yes.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
been such
thank
a
you.
great experience to be here. I hope it was useful. Connect with me if you want to know more about these topics, and I will see you around. Bye.
Thank you very much. And Emily, we're very glad you could join us. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Let's see. With that, I do want to thank everybody for being with us. There are all kinds of applause going up through the window. So thank you to our audience as well. So Belen, Emily, to our friends, thank you for being here. I know it's a busy, busy time for everybody. And as we close, please cherish the moment you have with your family, loved ones, and friends. Take care, and we shall see you next time. Bye-bye now.